Hello everybody. I was going to show you a little history on grease fittings. Everybody knows the common grease fitting, zerk fitting, whatever you want to call it. They make them in different lengths, different angles, different diameters. They make press fit ones. But this has pretty much been the common grease fitting for the last 80, 90 years or so. But before this grease fitting existed, they had, I don't know what they really called these, if these were grease zerks or if they were grease fittings, or they were definitely the forerunner to the grease fitting. And I think it's an interesting part of history that kind of is forgotten. I didn't know what these were until I found them in a box one day, and I did a little bit of research and I realized there was no videos on YouTube about the early grease fittings. So I thought it would be kind of educational, and maybe somebody would learn something or see some of these someday and realize, hey, what are these, and want to know what they are. But you probably won't see it in this camera view, but down at the bottom down here it says Alamite, and it has the patent date, and I believe it's like May or June of 1919. From what I can tell on the internet, these were patented in 1919, and they only ran them to about the late 1920s somewhere. And then by that time, I'm assuming the actual modern day grease zerk came out. But these are pretty neat. I found a fairly sized large box of them among my traveling, and just thought they were really neat and figured I'd do a video on them. This one, like you can see, this is a 45 degree, kind of like your modern day grease fittings. You had your straight, you had your long, and you had your 90 degree ones. Just kind of showing you the different varieties of them, just like the modern day grease fitting. But obviously somebody used these at one point in time and realized, you know what, I can make this thing better. And then that's how they came up with the modern day, with the rounded top where it locks on with the ball bearing, and you can kind of just snap it on, and it probably seals a little bit better compared to the old one with the flat top. These ball bearings actually push in fairly easily, so I'm guessing it shouldn't have made too much of a mess when you greased them. I'll kind of show you. I don't have the grease gun, but I'll kind of show you how they worked. What I did was I took this marker cap, and the black line that's kind of drawn on it kind of indicates the cut that was in the grease gun right there. It would have a pipe on the end of the grease gun with a notch there, L-shaped notch, and an L-shaped notch on the other side. And what you would do is you'd actually slip that onto the grease fitting, and you'd line up those pegs with the notches. And then once you'd get it to drop down on, you would just twist the grease gun, and that would lock it on the pegs. And then at that point, you could actually grease the grease fitting. And with the large ball bearing, there probably was a little bit less surface tension there for the grease, so it must have pushed down the ball bearing pretty easily and didn't make much of a mess. I don't know. I don't have a grease gun to mate with these, and I didn't live back then when they used them. So maybe somebody out there would know exactly how they do work, if they work well or not. And prior to that grease fitting, they had what they called the grease cup. They made these in different sizes, so from very large to even smaller ones than this. This is just the one that I had here to show you right now. But it would screw into the joint that you're trying to grease the same way a grease fitting would. And then it would sit on your I'm going to call it the joint that you want to lubricate. It would stand up there, usually upright, sometimes sideways, but usually more in an upright position. And how you would grease this, or load this, as I would say, because there was no grease gun, you would actually take the cap off. This would stay, the bottom half would stay in your apparatus that you're trying to grease. Then you would take the grease cup and take your loose grease and just keep packing the cap of grease. And then just level it off like you would a measuring cup. And then you would actually screw it back onto the fitting. You can bear with me here as I try to do this. My hands aren't as good as they used to be. But let's see here. Let me get it started. I think I did. Alright. So at a certain point, then the grease would start to ooze out of the bottom and into your joint or bearing that you're trying to grease. So you would grease it. You would turn the cap down, grease your bearing, and then maybe a couple hours later or the next day, when you use the piece of equipment again, you would go out there and you would just turn the cap down again, and you would feel the pressure in the cap. You would know you're pushing grease by how hard the cap turns, and then you'd be greased again. So depending on how often you turned the cap and how much you advanced it would determine how long the grease would stay in the cup before you had to take it off and fill it. So you might get a week out of it, you might get a month, but it was just another neat idea in the forerunner to the grease fitting. So I don't know if I missed any oddball manufacturers or styles along the way here, but I just kind of figured I'd cover the last 100 years of grease fittings. So hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye-bye.